What was the worst? Why the F did I say that moment? In 8th grade, there was this pretty girl that I sat next to who had a reputation for being depressed and sleeping around. In retrospect, she probably had a lot of emotional issues from her upbringing. One day, she asked me, "What would you do if I died?" The first that came to mind was, "I'd probably use your desk to put my books on." Teacher asked me, working hard or hardly working? I had a brain fart and said I'm hard. One of my friends heard me say it. I'll never live it down. I was in Spanish class. I suck at Spanish. We were going around the room saying what we were going to do after school and then saying who we wanted to speak next. I'm a dude and I was sitting next to my friend. I'll call her Hannah. My plan was to say I was going to do homework and then say Hannah so she'd go next. But I forgot the homework part and just said in Spanish, "After school I'm going to do Hannah." The whole class started laughing, including the teacher. I wanted to die. At a family function and my wife's aunt asks me how my kids are doing, and I replied they are still alive. I regretted those words instantly. I had become accustomed to give that response after 1 year when all 3 of my kids had an emergency room visit. Well, this is not the response to give to a mother who found her youngest hanging in their closet. I am horrible at conversation, but this set a record low for me. She didn't say anything but we both knew I was a moron. I did work up the courage to apologize for my stupidity and we are still good, but I will never use that response ever again. At least you didn't say they're hanging in there. My wife walked in on a burglar in our living room earlier this month. She's fine. He ran away and didn't get anything or hurt anyone. When she saw him there she screamed "Fricking excuse me." For days after the event she's been like, "Why was I polite?" My then future mother-in-law asked me how I like my steak at one of my first sit-down dinners with my then fiance's family. I said, "If it bleeds, I'll eat it." And then I winked. God damn it. In 5th grade we were at an assembly where they told a story and would hold up cards for the audience to yell. When they held the card that said "gasp," everyone gasped while I screamed the word "gasp" as loud as I have ever screamed anything in my life. I am a waiter. I try to hold the door open for every guest I wait on as they leave. One time I was holding the door for 3 women I had just waited on. One being an elderly lady using a walker. As she is walking towards me she says, "Thank you honey for getting me so full and being so good to me." Before I tell you my response I will try and justify it by saying if you work in customer service you know we have a mental catalog of phrases we use in certain situations. Well, I turned to the wrong page and said, "No problem mom, so full you can barely walk." How all 3 women looked at me in disgust. The elderly lady's walk got much faster as one hugged her in consolation. The other lady, I'm assuming her daughter, said to me, "She is 89 years old, thank you. We are very proud of her." I began to try and explain myself, but she wasn't having it and walked away. I was interviewing for my first job. I was probably 15-16 and nervous as heck. It was a job bussing tables and washing dishes at the golf club catering area. During the interviewer asked, "Are you punctual?" I replied with, "I think you can tell from my appearance that I'm not punk at all, and I don't really like that kind of music." Next question, "Are you frequently on time to appointments?" And I answered normally, thinking it was just the next question. Was at the liquor store a while back, making small talk with the cashier during checkout. Dude is telling me about how one of his friends got hit by a car down the street a few nights ago. No major injuries were sustained, but they still got hospitalized and freaked everyone out. My response? "Haha dang. Well maybe you should have less friends." My ears started burning immediately and he kind of lets his voice trail off while finishing up the transaction. I later called the place, asked to speak to him, and apologized profusely for saying such a stupid thing. He was laughing about it, thankfully, but agreed that it was out of left field and that he had no idea how to respond. Good times. Company Thanksgiving dinner, sitting next to a group of women complaining about their exes. One of them said something along the lines of "He's still got his hand and a bottle of lube so he'll be happy." I replied with, "To be honest, we don't even need lube most of the time." Right as everyone in the whole room stopped talking for some reason. My wife and I were having dinner with her boss, B, and B's husband and new baby. The baby had a loose pocket of skin on her head. My wife had mentioned it before, so I was aware but not really thinking about it. I couldn't see it at the angle that the baby was being held at. B moved the baby to hold her with the other arm, and I saw it move. It was like a large, fleshy blister. It covered half of the back of her head and was partially full of fluid. As the baby was moved, it sloshed. I quietly exclaimed, "The baby needs a hat." B shot daggers out of her eyes at me while her husband suppressed a laugh. Do you remember that one episode of SpongeBob where Squidward is in a talent show and no one will clap for him, but then when SpongeBob comes out to mop the floor, everyone cheers? Well, one time in college, I was at my college, and after one of the acts, this tiny nerdy guy came out to mop the stage because there was spilled water or something, and I screamed, "Yeah, go SpongeBob," and the auditorium went silent, and everyone around me turned and stared. I left shortly after. Got let go from my job by the boss. Early that morning he had chased a robber from his house. The firing was amicable. I understood why but knew it sucked for both of us. Trying to lighten the mood when I walked out, I said, "Keep your doors locked." He did not think it was a reference to his earlier story. "Oh no, I meant because I'm going to rob you." 7 years ago, as I was working event staff security, it was my responsibility to make sure the drunk people were standing by, in position for their shuttle buses after a baseball game. I saw these two friends. One was holding up the other. As I walked by, I heard the one say, "SHHH, come on, bus is almost here," to which the other responded, in what I thought was a sarcastic tone, "Ooh, the bus." I chuckled and commented I remembered my first B. It turns out the one helping the other was the father, taking care of his son that had had a traumatic brain injury 2 years earlier. I apologized profusely, but still feel like crap. I once started laughing at a sweet little girl pretending to be a horse. She was not pretending to be a horse. She had a severe spinal deformity. So I was at a group fitness class and the instructor was known for having weird exercises like bending and swinging one of your arms in a circle and calling it making soup. He gets really into and asks the class what soup they were making. Chicken soup, tomato soup. He asked me and I panicked and said, "Water." "I'm making exercise, you freaking dork. Let me work out." I was a math tutor for grade school kids at a franchise place. One day a middle school aged girl came in several hours after the time she usually does. We didn't do appointments. The kids usually followed routines though. So I asked why she was coming in later than usual, just making small talk, and she said she went to her grandmother's funeral that morning. So I said, "Well, at least that's better than doing math on a Saturday." Trying to joke around, she kind of sheepishly faked a smile and I immediately realized I'm a freaking idiot and walked away instead of apologizing. I just didn't speak to her again for a while, because I'm an idiot. An ex was explaining she was self-conscious about something, and it was slightly odd, and I intended to say something reassuring and comforting. What I actually said was, "That's strange, of all the things you could be self-conscious about." On the morning of my wedding, the third time I'd met my soon-to-be mother-in-law, I was understandably jittery about the day, probably not at the top of my game. So, I warmly greeted her by saying, "Hi Linda, it's so good to see you." She's quiet for a moment, and then says, "Actually, it's Laura." I knew it was Laura. I have no clue why I called her Linda. I was mortified, and felt like I had only one way out of the situation. I replied after a pause, "I'm pretty sure it's Linda." To her credit, and to this day, whenever she calls me she tells me it's Linda, and I've never called her anything but that since. I once complimented a girl I know on her cute outfit and asked where she got it. She named a plus size store. For whatever stupid reason I replied, "Really? I need to gain a bunch of weight so I can shop there." I immediately realized what I had said, and we looked at each other for a moment, looked away, and sat in uncomfortable silence for the rest of class because I'm a jerk. I took my girlfriend to a very beautiful park and served her a gourmet picnic. After we were finished, I nervously took her hand in mine and asked her to marry me. I mumbled, or her ears failed, or I don't know what, but she replied with "Sure, whatever," obviously missing what I had said. In my mind I thought, "Andrew, you idiot, you screwed this up." But out of my mouth came the words, "No, you idiot, I'm proposing." Yes, I called my wife an idiot as part of my marriage proposal. After that I kind of blanked out until I saw her crying and saying yes over and over again. Our 18th anniversary is coming up in the spring. I causally handed my now wife the ring box and said hold this for a second from behind and got down on one knee. She just pocketed it and turned around, wondering why I was on one knee. Look in your pocket, you idiot. We should start a club. My 7th grade teacher was telling us about her sister's wedding in Mexico. It was the first day back from summer vacation. I raised my hand and waited for her to call on me. I then asked if they had mucho sexo. Immediately kicked out of class. Now here is the thing. On Letterman the night before, a guest was telling him about his Mexican wedding and Letterman asked if they had mucho sexo and got huge laughs. I am not Letterman. About 7 years ago, trying to find an original way to compliment my GF, now wife, told her you look good in nothing. Fast forward an hour later. Oh crap. No, I meant that you look good naked. Still better than my husband. Sometimes he tells me I have nice bones out of nowhere, or that he likes my face skin. He does not give any normal compliments to balance these out. I might not die of natural causes. Not me, but my brother. Before he came home from university, we cleaned the house, so everything smelled pristine. After he got back, he went into the bathroom and noticed how nice it smelled. Then he went into the kitchen, where my mother was cooking, and proceeded to tell her that her food smelled like the bathroom. R.I.P. Yo mom, that food smells like crap and I love it. At one point I was having lunch with my then girlfriend. I asked if she wanted to say hi to her friend. She said she didn't see her. I pointed to her and asked, do you not recognize her? Bent over, to which she responded, do you? Not with the clothes on. Not me, but my husband. He was out drinking with his friends. A girl comes up to him asking if he wants to dance. What he means to say is I only dance when I'm drunk, and I'm still sober. But what he actually said was I'm not drunk enough to dance with you. I wasn't even there and I can feel that poor girl's self-esteem drop every time he tells the story. My friend was talking to me about some random stuff while she was getting changed, and I wasn't really paying attention. My replies were mainly years and numbers. I heard her ask me something, but I had no idea what, so I just smiled at her and said absolutely and hoped for the best. Turned out she asked me if she looked fat. Dies instantly. This was my 105-year-old mother, but I was the one cognizant enough to be mortified. An older black woman was lifting my mother into her recliner at the nursing home, and my southern mother patted her arm and said, "You're such a good pickaninny." I gasped, turned bright red, and stammered some inane apology. The CNA turned and left without a word. I still cringe when I see her. For people not from the South, pickaninny, no clue how to spell it, is a more polite word for a black child. A lady would never use the N-word, and this implies you are cute and young. Coworker's 8.5-month pregnant wife was strolling into the office when my 19-year-old mouth said, "You're almost as big as your husband." Thought nothing of it until an hour later when my coworker and I had a chat about hormones. I work in a hospital. I was taking a patient for an x-ray. The patient was in a wheelchair. Me, I suck at steering these things. I'll try not to drive you into a wall. Patient had just spent 6 weeks in bed seriously injured after driving into a wall. Back in 7th grade, a teacher called on me to answer a question. I guess I was a little sick at the time because I needed to clear my throat, yet decided against it because people might think I'm gross or something. As you can probably guess, that didn't work out well and I sounded like a chronic smoker. Then finally, after trying my hardest to nonchalantly clear my throat, I announced to the class, "Sorry, I have a speech defect, I do not." Interview for an administrator in a doctor's surgery. Seems to be going well. Getting through the majority of questions, no issues. No real concerns about my experience or work history, and they seem pleased with what I'm saying. Just 3 or 4 more questions and the interview would be over. Interviewer: "This job can be very stressful. What do you do to release stress?" Me: "I've always felt less stress after I've had intercourse." The interviewer and his assistant completely lost it and burst into laughter. The interview effectively ended there and then, and no, I did not get the job. Went to drinks with friends. 2 of them had been seeing each other for a while. Some background: this couple were always fighting and the guy had been trying to break up with the girl for months, but she always cried and guilt tripped him, so he never did it. Anyway, we're at drinks, I get sat next to said girl. Yay. And she then proceeds to moan at me for the rest of night about him. I'm just there to catch up with friends and she's really bumming me out. I try and comfort, offer advice, but she was having none of it. Towards the end of the night she has a dig at my girlfriend for some reason. I phase out and say from nowhere, at least the love isn't dead in my relationship. Silence. The whole table was looking at me. I had pretty much shouted this to everyone. I wanted the world to swallow me whole. Later my other friends actually thanked me for saying what they were all thinking. This couple broke up a couple of weeks later. When I was about 8 years old, our school had a postbox for Christmas cards, and about once a week teachers would come round and give the children their respective cards. One of my classmates, Ryan, who for some reason always disliked me and picked on me, occasionally got a card and opened it to see the words "You will die." He laughed it off. But the next day my teacher attempted to launch a full-scale forensic investigation and incorrectly concluded that the handwriting was mine, and I had the motive. I denied it repeatedly because I had absolutely nothing to do with it, but my teacher just wouldn't let it go. He called class meetings to see if anybody knew who sent the card. No success. He pulled what few friends I had into a private room to see if he could get them to rat me out. No success. He kept trying to surprise a confession out of me by occasionally mentioning the card recipient's name in general conversation and gauging the reaction on my confused infant face. No success. Eventually, about a week later, my teacher dropped the bomb. My class would not be allowed to go to the school Christmas party disco thing unless the culprit is found. Being that I didn't have many friends and I was fairly socially awkward, I decided it wouldn't be a big deal if I missed that party, and that I should take one for the team. Here's the why the frick did I say that moment. I told my teacher that it was me who sent the card so that my class could have fun, and to this day I regret it. I was sent to the head teacher's office, which, when you're 8 years old and terrified of unknown consequences, you arrive at in tears, where I was shouted at for about half an hour. I was told how despicable I was, what a disgusting thing it was to do, and he even said that it almost became a police matter because it was a death threat. I vividly remember the head teacher looking really disappointed at one point and him saying to himself, "And this is supposed to be the season of goodwill to all men." And I just felt awful. I was made to apologize to the classmate in question, as well as write a 3-page letter of apology. Then the worst part, my school called my parents and they were horrified at what I'd supposedly done. It was an incredibly negative formative experience from my childhood, and I think about it regularly. Because of my stupidity and my teacher's actions, I was ostracized by my peers for a long time, which made my early years quite difficult. Even 19 years later, every so often I think about going back to my school and speaking to my old teacher and head teacher to clarify the situation, explain that it wasn't me, set the record straight. Last time I looked at the school website though, both have left, so I guess it's something I'll have to live with. Back in high school, my sorta girlfriend, we'd been dating for maybe 2 months, invited me over to her house to hang out at their pool and with her family. I went. The dad was very intensely Baptist, of the common sort in the South, and, on my first date with his daughter, had asked me to explain why I deserved to go to heaven. But I sort of got along with them, because I'm generally good at getting along with most of anyone, so I was having a good time that day. Girlfriend, her parents, and I started playing some board game together. There was some friendly banter and smack talk going on. GF and I had watched Anchorman a few days earlier, I'm pretty sure, so I started repeating some of the quotes from what movie back at her for the banter. I knew it was a little risky since the parents didn't let anyone watch anything that wasn't A Walk to Remember or Seventh Heaven, but whatever. There was enough background noise where I got away with it a few times, but then came one of those moments where all background and conversation noise ceases, which coincided with my telling my girlfriend to go back to your home on W Island. I muttered a thing or two about being from a movie we watched, which barely helped anything since they definitely saw me as corrupting their good Christian girl from there on out. God, this is freaking painful to type. One day, when I was young, probably 10-11 years old, my aunt and uncle came to our house to visit us. My mom, stepdad, brother, aunt, uncle, and myself were all looking through old family pictures. We came across this picture of me, age 2, and my brother, age 7, playing in the sprinkler. So everyone starts laughing at the picture, mostly because I'm naked kid jumping through the sprinkler. My brother laughs and goes, "I'm going to take this to school and show everyone," meaning that he was going to take it to school and embarrass me in front of my friends. My brain decides to go full crap mode and I blurt out, "Why? Does it give you a boner?" Mainly, I think I was trying to embarrass him and it was the only thing my crap kid brain came up with at the time. Everyone stops laughing and just stares at me. I realize the impact of what I said and my stepdad just goes, "What the frick is wrong with you? Go to your room." I get up from the chair and run upstairs, wishing I could just disappear forever. I sometimes think about it and just have to ask, why? Why you do this to me, brain? High school graduation. Post ceremony. Everyone is hugging and taking pictures. I see a friend of mine. Her name was Danielle, we called her Danny. Danny was a large girl. My mother would call her heavy set. She approaches me. I open my arms for a hug. "Hey, Big Danny," I say, with great affection. My soul is immediately transported to a tiny black room with one chair that I'm curled up on. "Oh no," my soul says. "Big," says Danny, and I'm thrown back into reality where I panic and mumble something about her personality being big or some other BS. She knew what I meant. Somebody murder me with the heavy applicants. When we were in elementary school, we had a presentation where we brought down 3 kids to dance, and the best dancer got tickets to an amusement park. Well, I was a fat awkward kid and this guy, we'll call him Steve, kicked our butt and won the tickets. Fast forward a few years and Steve turned into a total junkie. He ended up dying falling off a bridge he was climbing while high as a kite. There was a Facebook page where they were talking about him, and someone brought up the dance contest. "Oh, I remember when Steve did the dance contest and kicked Red's butt," to which I replied he won the battle, but I won the war, way too soon, and it did not go over well. At my friend's wedding, which I was standing up in, I walk into the bathroom which has 1 or 2 more men in it than there are stalls and urinals for. My friend says I guess I'll use the handicap stall since it was unoccupied, but apparently he wasn't sure that he should use it. Without missing a beat, I said that's okay, it works for mentally handicapped people too. It was at that point that I realized that it wasn't my friend who said it, just some guy I didn't know who was in his 40s or 50s. I was 24 at the time. Silence. I quickly go into the other stall which someone had just exited, peed as fast as possible, and left without washing my hands so I would get out of there before the other guy left the handicap stall. I was 15 and in the early stages of my emo phase, so I wore skinny jeans. Except they didn't make skinny jeans for men at the time, so I wore girl jeans, just as many of my male, skinny jean-bearing friends did. I went to a birthday party at a local restaurant, but I didn't normally speak to anyone there except the birthday girl and another one of my buddies. This, alongside my social awkwardness, made it difficult to think of a conversation topic. The girl across from me got up to go to the bathroom and I noticed that she had a familiar pattern on her jeans and thought it was the key to not sitting there awkwardly. As she comes back and sits down, I immediately said, "So, I noticed we're wearing the same jeans." I still think about it 8 years later. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.